CCP sparks massive change in housing market, public ownership making a comeback. Blood red night sky reappears in Zhejiang, extremely terrifying. Great Translation Movement cripples CCP propaganda, over 40 arrested. Rising funeral service demand sparks suspicions in CCP cemetery investments. Former agent exposes cross-border secret abductions of Falun Gong members. It's all covered in today's China Truths. CCP sparks massive change in housing market, public ownership making a comeback. Last Friday, May 17, the Chinese Communist Party announced the largest real estate rescue policy in history. The central measure of this policy is the government's purchase of commercial properties to convert them into public rental housing. However, some analysts believe this signals a shift back to public ownership of property in China. Bloomberg previously cited estimates from Tianfeng Securities indicating that, as of March, there were approximately 4.4 billion square meters of vacant housing in China. To rejuvenate the housing market, it is conservatively estimated that the government would need to repurchase around 770 million square meters, requiring an investment of 7 trillion, about $274.8 billion to 10 trillion yuan, about $392.6 billion. However, many local governments are currently facing financial difficulties, prompting the CCP to issue ultra-long-term national bonds and enlist banks to help resolve these issues. The question remains, where will the money for these property purchases come from? Regarding this matter, Mr. Hu Liren, a Chinese private entrepreneur living in the U.S., criticized the current public housing initiatives as a form of governmental robbery aimed at converting private properties into public assets. He pointed out that this is very concerning because private properties, including current real estate holdings, could potentially become public housing in the future due to the 70-year property rights policy. What happens after these 70 years? It's entirely possible that the government will lower property prices and take ownership, forcing people to pay rent to live in properties they once owned. Mr. Hu also points to the stalled implementation of property taxes, typically a sign of recognized private ownership. He suggests this delay might be deliberate, with the government intending to eventually reclaim properties and charge rent in the future. He sees this as a trap set by the CCP to maintain control over the populace. Furthermore, he stated that keeping the populace poor and uneducated is fundamental to the CCP's long-term rule. If people become too wealthy, they might travel abroad and see the advanced, civilized societies outside of China, which could undermine CCP control. Therefore, once people's wealth exceeds basic needs, the CCP finds ways to burden them with debt, effectively reducing them to a state of servitude. Currently, the Chinese populace is gradually returning to an era of slavery. Similarly, commentator Hu also stated that China's real estate sector is reverting to public ownership, with land and housing returning to a planned allocation system. He described the planned economy as a source of poverty and hardship, leading to economic disasters, severe shortages, and even famine. Hu explains that the government-backed entities, or also called the national team, won't be purchasing unfinished projects at market rates. Instead, they'll likely offer a price based on the developer's costs plus a meager 3 to 5% profit margin, a losing proposition for developers. He warns that don't be fooled into thinking the government is buying your project out of goodwill. This isn't a rescue mission but arranging your funeral. They're offering you a cheap coffin, and once you're in it, you're out of the game. In addition, the central government has initiated a deleveraging campaign, forcing local governments that don't meet specific financial targets to halt land sales. This move is seen as crippling for many local governments, as land sales are a major source of revenue. Hu concludes that these actions signal a fundamental shift in the property market, with the state tightening its grip and squeezing out private enterprise. He predicts this will lead to widespread economic hardship for ordinary citizens. Blood red night sky reappears in Zhejiang, extremely terrifying. 2 years after it was last seen, the night sky over Zhoushan, Zhejiang province, once again turned a terrifying blood red again. On the evening of May 23, social media was flooded with videos from Zhoushan locals showing the sky's abrupt transformation into a crimson hue, sparking fears of an apocalyptic event. Many online users interpreted this as a foreboding omen, potentially signaling an impending bloody disaster. This phenomenon echoes a similar event on May 7, 2022, when the sky above Zhoushan's Putuo district also turned red, a sight that local elders claimed they had never encountered before. Shortly after, on May 11, the sky above Fuzhou in Fujian province experienced the same eerie transformation, attracting widespread attention. At the time, Chinese officials attributed the red color to the refraction and scattering of light from red lamps on distant fishing boats. This explanation was met with widespread ridicule online, with many finding it implausible. In another unsettling incident this year, on the morning of April 15, residents of Wuhan in Hubei province also witnessed a blood-red sky. Given Wuhan's inland location, the previous explanation involving fishing boat lights doesn't hold water. State media quoted experts who offered vague reasons for the phenomenon, citing strong convective weather and nearby artificial light sources among other possibilities. A blood-red sky has long been viewed as an ominous portent in Chinese culture. Ancient texts associate a red hue in the sky with impending war and disaster, suggesting that natural phenomena like blood moons or scarlet skies could herald military strife and severe droughts. Historical observations link blood-red skies with the decline of dynasties, such as during the final years of the Northern Song and Yuan dynasties, implying that such eerie skyscapes could also signify the collapse of governing powers. Detailed chronicles from the Ming dynasty, as recorded in Hannan Su Junji, recount that in the first year of Emperor Chongzhen's reign in 1628, the entire sky over Shaanxi turned blood-red. This event was followed by a series of calamities. In the 5th year there was a severe famine, the 6th year brought major floods, the 7th year saw autumn locusts and more famine, and by the 8th year, drought and floods devastated the region, rendering the people destitute. The records continue, describing ongoing disasters including locust plagues that obscured the sky and successive years of drought that culminated in widespread suffering. The extensive historical record Siku Quanshu also details this event. On March 25, in the first year of Chongzhen, before dawn, the entire sky over Shaanxi was as red as blood. By dawn, the sky turned yellow. This redness was deemed an evil omen, foretelling a severe drought and sudden military conflicts. That year, rebel leader Wang Er initiated an uprising. Great Translation Movement cripples CCP propaganda, over 40 arrested. The Great Translation Movement emerged in 2022, casting a global spotlight on the Chinese Communist Party by translating their public statements, which often contain anti-humanity rhetoric, into various languages. This initiative has continually faced suppression from the CCP. Tam, a Hong Kong native and an editor for the movement, is currently seeking asylum in the United States. He explained his motivation for joining the movement stemmed from his inability to tolerate the CCP's continual deception towards the public. He said, "The propaganda from official Chinese, communist, media is completely two-faced. Inside China, they portray Russia as great, just, and certain to win, but on their channels aimed at audiences outside of China, they act all neutral. It was such blatant hypocrisy that we were just like, what the hell is this?" And that's what sparked the Great Translation Movement. The movement began as a grassroots online initiative during the 2022 Russia-Ukraine war. It involves translating CCP propaganda and nationalist rhetoric into English and other languages, aiming to reveal the CCP's misleading and provocative statements to the world. The translations span a variety of topics, including the CCP's endorsement of Russia. The movement also translated CCTV reports labeling the United States as the world's foremost failure in pandemic response, the chief political blame shifter, and a bastion of origin tracing terrorism. Furthermore, it spotlighted the reactions of Chinese nationalists who celebrated the assassination of former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, an event that shocked the global community. Upon its inception, the Great Translation movement immediately attracted severe criticism from the CCP state media. In June 2022, a significant crackdown was launched by Chinese security services, resulting in the arrest of over 40 volunteers involved in the movement. Regarding this matter, commentator Li Lin explained, the CCP is arresting these translators primarily because it fears exposure of its falsehoods. Once the global community recognizes the CCP's true character, it will resonate with people inside China, leading to a widespread awakening. When the Chinese people fully realize the extent of the CCP's deception, they will no longer tolerate such a regime. Observers outside China believe that the CCP's aggressive suppression efforts will eventually have the opposite effect. Epoch Times columnist Wang He remarked, as a grassroots movement, this signifies a public awakening. The oppressive measures by the CCP will only serve to broaden and accelerate this awakening among the populace. Rising funeral service demand sparks suspicions in CCP's cemetery investments. As the economy continues to falter, the real estate market in mainland China is worsening, with ongoing drops in property prices. This economic downturn has made it difficult for the Chinese Communist Party to sustain its land-based financial strategies. Consequently, numerous city investment companies have turned to investing in cemeteries, touting these investments as guaranteed profits. However, there are suspicions that the CCP is deliberately concealing true mortality data. A May 23 report from the Mainland Economic Observer revealed that since 2020, city investment companies in regions like Jiangxi, Hunan, and Inner Mongolia have actively funded cemetery projects. These projects require less initial capital yet yield stable and significant returns, largely because they can be financed through special bonds and other methods. An industry expert noted, local government-funded cemetery projects are cash-rich and not dependent on high-risk financing. Their primary costs are construction-related, and operationally, they are almost always profitable. The China Cemetery Industry Development Potential Forecast and Investment Strategy Research Report 2024-2030 suggests a rising death rate and increasing demand for funeral services, with the market growing from 169.5 billion yuan, about $23.8 billion in 2015 to 310.2 billion yuan, about $43.6 billion in 2022. The high cost of cemeteries in major cities has led to the phenomenon of urn houses, where residents buy homes in smaller cities to store their relatives' urns. The city investment companies, established in 1991, act as local government financing tools. Online critics have sharply criticized these practices, with comments like, "They're draining every last drop, now that they can't profit from the living, they turn to the dead," and "They're ruthless, tormenting both the living and the dead." The lucrative nature of the cemetery market has led some to speculate that recent mortality data across various regions might be painting a misleadingly favorable investment scenario. For years, the CCP has obscured the actual death toll of the pandemic. Since early this year, the pandemic has continued to spread, with frequent sudden death incidents reported, hospitals overwhelmed, and the CCP banning nucleic acid testing in hospitals, instead attributing the surge to influenza, colds, or mycoplasma infections. Until 2022, CCP's civil affairs authorities consistently published cremation data. However, starting from the fourth quarter of 2022, this data was no longer disclosed, prompting widespread international skepticism. The Guardian noted a break from the Ministry of Civil Affairs' long-standing practice of disclosing cremation numbers in quarterly reports. The South China Morning Post found that several provincial regions in China had deviated from their usual practice by omitting cremation figures from public civil data releases. On July 17, 2023, the Zhejiang Provincial Civil Affairs Department reported a significant 72.7% increase in cremations for the first quarter, which it promptly removed following widespread attention. As previously reported by the Epoch Times on January 16, 2023, Mr. Li Hongzhi, the founder of Falun Dafa, claimed that the CCP has concealed the pandemic for over 3 years, leading to 400 million deaths in China, with projections of up to 500 million deaths by the pandemic's end. Former agent exposes cross-border secret abductions of Falun Gong members. The Chinese Communist Party has been persecuting Falun Gong practitioners for 25 years. A recent revelation by a former secret agent from the CCP's Ministry of Public Security has shed light on the abduction of Falun Gong practitioners in Southeast Asia, raising international concerns. The former agent, named Eric, who primarily operated in Southeast Asia, defected to Australia last year. He disclosed details of his operations in Thailand, saying, "They would provide me with the Falun Gong practitioners' personal information, including photos and identity details. My job was to verify their residence and report back. The actual capture was usually handled by local police." He further detailed how the CCP coordinated with local law enforcement in Thailand to detain the practitioners and forcibly deport them to China. In most cases, this involved local police for convenience and to avoid complications. Eric also revealed that in some instances, individuals were forcibly kidnapped and potentially transported across borders, likely back to China. Moreover, the CCP occasionally employed gangsters to carry out direct abductions of Falun Gong practitioners, hiring individuals who could operate under the radar and whose exposure would not significantly impact the CCP. Eric described the Ministry of Public Security Political Security Bureau, where he worked, as one of the darkest branches of the CCP government. The persecution of Falun Gong by the CCP began on July 20, 1999, and has since been extended globally, employing brutal measures to maintain control. This persecution has also included efforts to recruit spies among those returning to China, to collect intelligence on Falun Gong activities abroad. Notably, comic artist Rebel Pepper Wang Liming shared a personal account involving a close friend from China who was influential on social media with millions of followers on Sino Weibo. This friend returned to his hometown for a family visit, where he was politely invited by the local State Security Bureau for a discussion over tea. During this meeting, they requested his help in gathering intelligence on Falun Gong after he returned to Japan, particularly information about epoch times. They even suggested he infiltrate the Falun Gong community to collect intelligence. However, he declined their request. Wang commented that this approach by the CCP distorts both human morality and the essence of human nature. He explained, "They are trying to turn everyone into spies. They target any influential person they think they can use, asking if they would be willing to collect intelligence. It's frightening." Former agent Eric stated, "The CCP was born out of the Soviet communist system and incorporates all its past political movements, clearly identifying it as a fascist totalitarian party." Don't forget to comment in the section below to share your opinions on today's topic with us. If you find the information helpful, please share this video with a friend to watch together. This will be a great source of motivation for our team to produce more and more quality and reliable videos. And also don't forget to like and subscribe to see more interesting topics from China Truths. Thank you for tuning in.